I'm Lannan. He's Giles. This is Lannan and Giles Unscripted. We're going to talk today about Person of the Year for Time Magazine, not actually a person. We're going to talk about some other news items, what's been happening with AI, and also a lawsuit involving NASCAR that I think you'll have some interest in. Duncan, what have you got?
Basically, some stories, updates. We want to talk about the state of Indiana Senate vote yesterday on redistricting, as well as the situation that's unfolded at the University of Michigan football program.
So that's coming up in just a moment on Lannan and Giles Unscripted. Welcome to Unscripted, a podcast with no script by design. We're not following a plan, and that's exactly the point. This show is about whatever's on the minds of your hosts, Larry Lannan and Duncan Giles. We'll dig into what's happening in the world, and just as importantly, what isn't making headlines this week. So, with that, let's get started. The conversation could go anywhere because we go wherever the microphones take us. Here's Larry Lannan and Duncan Giles. Today is Friday, December 12th in 2025. Thank you for joining us today. If you're watching on YouTube or some of the platforms, we're on several platforms audio-wise, we would certainly ask you to drop a comment, in particular on YouTube. Give us a like and, subscribe if you possibly can. It helps us and gets the word out. If you like our podcast, more people will hear about it. So Duncan, Indiana, our great state of Indiana, we call the Hoosier state. By the way, I found out as a young man that, in Indiana, the word Hoosier has a nice connotation. When you leave Indiana, the word Hoosier does not have a nice connotation.
Not so much, exactly.
Yeah, it's I went to Ohio and I went to a Reds game. I remember this now that I'm thinking about it. I was at a Cincinnati Reds game at Crosley Field. Pete Rose made an error, and a guy behind me yelled out, "You Hoosier!" I thought, okay, I'm not going to mention where I'm from, at least not in this crowd. But anyway, Indiana did make national news, for better or worse. I'll let you be the decider of that. The day before we record this, because Indiana basically had been considering redistricting. We have 9 congressional seats in the U.S. Congress in Indiana. Right now, 2 of them are held by Democrats, 7 by Republicans. The National Republican Party wanted to redistrict in the middle of our 10-year period, then 5 years in, and try to draw the districts to, hopefully, in their eyes, draw 9 Republican districts. Our Indiana governor, Mike Braun, was all for this. The Indiana House of Representatives voted for it. And then it went to the state Senate. Everybody thought this was going to be a close vote. It was going to be a nail biter. It was not close at all. The vote was 31-19. Even a majority of the Republicans in the Indiana Senate voted against this. And it kind of goes, Indiana, even though our Indiana House and Senate are overwhelmingly Republican, they don't always agree on everything. It's amazing how something will pass in one body and not even get a hearing in the other. Well, this is a great case of that. In fact, originally the Senate wasn't even going to vote. And then finally, Rod Bray, the leader, said, okay, I'll put it up for a vote, but I don't think it's going to pass. It did not pass. I want to just quote my state senator. His name is Kyle Walker. I'm going to quote just a brief part of the statement he issued after that vote. I simply could not support an effort to redraw legislative districts in the middle of a decade solely for political purposes. Our commitment to democracy requires predictability, transparency, and public trust. And I'll end the quote there. He went on to say how an overwhelming number of his constituents let him know that he was against this. So give me your analysis of all this, Duncan.
Yeah, this was really a fascinating study in, okay, pressure from DC versus what local folks want, because everything you read, overwhelmingly people were saying, no, we do not want to have this redistrict just strictly for political purposes. You know, great quote from your state senator. Now, to give you an example, I emailed both my representative and my state senator. My representative came back and very quickly and said, hey, thank you very much for your input. I'm taking all the input I can, and therefore I'm going to make my decision from that. So at least they were acknowledging, the people and all that. My state senator makes it extremely tough to find their email, no response whatsoever, and she voted for this redistricting. And I just was like, why? I mean, it's just, to me, the whole problem is if you have to redistrict to be able to keep yourself in power, there's a problem there.
Well,
You're trying to hit the will of the people.
the other part of this, my state senator, Kyle Walker, who I quoted, he was victimized by all of these pressure tactics. I mean, getting pizza. I mean, there were small things like getting pizzas delivered that you didn't order, small stuff like that. But it got big. I mean, some were swatted. Now, swatting
Exactly.
dangerous thing. Swatting is where police think you've got a dangerous situation. It takes resources. People can get accidentally hurt or killed in a swatting incident, and swatting happened. So there was big time pressure techniques put on these people. And I think Kyle Walker just decided, I can do something else for a living other than, I mean, most of our representatives, except the leaders, generally have other jobs. This is not their full-time job. We do kind of have what you would generally call a citizen legislature. But I think he made the decision that, this isn't worth it anymore. And to me, that's a very sad byproduct of all this.
It certainly is. It really is, because you saw immediately after the vote where our governor did not handle it well. The president tried to play it off, even though he had a lot of political stake in this. And then you see some of these private groups saying, we're going to be primarying all these people who voted against this. And it's like, I hope they do. And I hope the people that they're primarying get trounced, because they're trying to do, right by the citizens of Indiana, which is what they're elected to do. The vast majority of those senators did what they heard from their constituents, which I think is how it should work.
Well, my last comment on all this, you mentioned our governor, Mike Braun. I just want to mention that Mike Braun has taken the position that Indiana's state employees, the civil service workers, should not be working at home. They should be working in the office. This is the same governor who is from a place called Jasper, Indiana, in the far southern part of the state. He, it's, I think, state expense, installed a helipad in his home in Jasper so he can commute between Indianapolis and Jasper. And that's all I've got to say about that.
Yeah, you just see stuff like this and you just shake your head, and it's like, this is not leadership. Former Governor Mitch Daniels spoke out about this and was very emphatic. There shouldn't be redistricting. And, I don't agree with former Governor Daniels on a lot of things, but at least he was a leader. He tried to lead from the front on issues he believed in. And it doesn't seem like we've gotten a lot of that over the last couple of years.
Well, what I found interesting, President Trump issued one of his messages saying that, when he found out Mitch Daniels made these statements, well, Mitch Daniels is a failed Senate candidate. Mitch Daniels never ran for the Senate.
Well, don't let facts get in the way of a good antidote.
Well, let's move on to something else, because Time Magazine, going way back, over a century, has had a history of having a person of the year. They name a person of the year about this time every year. They named their person of the year for this year yesterday, the day before we record this on December 12th. What I find interesting, Duncan, is that when they have a person of the year, it's not always a person. For example, they had the computer as their person of the year one year, which I found rather odd. This time, they didn't actually have a person of the year this year. They had a group of people, what they called the architects of AI. And the picture that they put together were all these people, these tech people they consider to be architects of AI, sitting on a steel beam hanging up somewhere, up with the city in the background, like they're building this architecture for AI, like they're building a skyscraper or something. Of course, one thing that Time Magazine has been very clear about is that their person of the year is just who's made an impact for better or worse. I mean, they're open. I mean, Stalin and Hitler have been their persons of the year in past history, so they made it clear it's impactful people, not necessarily people who are impactful. They could be impactful for good or evil. They're just impactful. Architects of AI. What do you think?
Yeah, it's everybody is including the stock market. Everything is AI, AI, AI. You take a look at what our former employer, the Internal Revenue Service, is going to be doing. They are fully embracing AI, chatbots, things of that nature. And the discussions that I've had with people about this have been, I think it can be a great tool, can be, but it's still in its infancy. There are still a lot of bugaboos out there with AI, as in garbage in, garbage out. So, a lot of times you're not getting accurate information. And when they're going to try and have them read tax code and things like that, it's like, that scares the heck out of me. So, and a couple of years ago, when I was in a briefing, I had a series of questions about AI for the folks who are answering the phones. I wanted to know, okay, are you going to be replacing people who are answering the phones with AI chatbots or anything of that nature? And they're like, oh, no, nobody's going to lose their job. We're not going to have that happen. And lo and behold, this is the type of thing that they're rolling towards, is trying to have those types of answers that, simple answers. Well, sometimes, as you well know, our answers were not simple. And to
Well, in
have a
tax
chatbot
law,
think
no,
about that.
in tax law, no way. And just procedurally, you can get enmeshed in a big mess just trying to sort things out that way. But yeah, I think you go back to one of our past guests, Scott McCain, who's talked about using AI and try to write his new book, and how he learned that AI is designed to please you, and it will make stuff up just to
Yep.
please you. How he AI came back with some example that would be great for his book, and he tried to find this company, found out it didn't even exist. It was made up to make him happy. I've played around with AI, and it makes up quotes, it makes up facts, and most of them, not all, will tell you. They'll give a qualifier saying, check your facts because we're not always factually correct. Keep that in mind. And when the IRS wants to use that to help people on the phones or on a chatbot, think about that too. Speaking of AI, how many times, Duncan, when you were in college, did you have to, sweat all night studying for a test or writing a paper? Man, I did that all the time
Yep.
with my typewriter and all that. Of course, now you've got word processors, which makes that was a big step forward for me. Had I been in college, just been able to use that. I was such a bad typist. But now you've got uh, artificial intelligence. Well, the Washington Post has a story that came out in this December 12th edition by a reporter named Joanna Slater. There is a professor at the University of Wyoming, Catherine Hartman. She does an honors seminar in religious studies. So, how did she do her test? She did something that I don't think most professors have done for a very long time. For 30 minutes, she grilled her students orally. She asked
Yep.
them oral questions in religious studies, gave them a chance to answer orally, to talk to her. And so that's just one way that higher education is trying to say, maybe we should go back to the future in trying to test our students, because with AI, we're not really sure that we're getting a good test of what our students have learned.
Yeah. Almost like the Socratic method, have a question, answer it, discuss it, that sort of thing, versus, okay, are you just looking it up? Um, a lot of times when we've gone to more computer things, it used to be you'd have some sort of judgment. Now it's like, okay, you ask this, if they say this, you do this on, any company you go into, whether it be government organization or anything else. And as I said, we're raising a era of idiot savants. They ask the right questions, but they have no idea why they're asking that question because the training isn't there a lot of times. And when and I've done this before with people when I'm talking to them on the phone, asking about a particular service or things of that nature. Asking them why these things are, or can you give me a site or something like that? They can't because they haven't been trained. Basically, all they're trained on is what does the computer pop up? What does it say? Okay, if the person says this, I'm supposed to say that. They have the script that they go by that pops up on their screen, and that's all they can do.
Let me go to another issue. I've been following something in the news and a big development just a couple of days ago. And I've always been a big racing fan. I've enjoyed IndyCar. I've enjoyed following Formula One. And I have had some interest in NASCAR. I haven't been as interested lately. I think the cars they use today aren't as competitive. I just don't think the racing is as much fun as it used to be. That's just my opinion. Obviously, not everybody shares that. But there's been a big lawsuit because one thing about NASCAR, it's been the brainchild of Bill France. He created NASCAR in
Yep.
the early part of the 20th century. It it was descended from the old moonshiners in the South. I mean, that's the history of NASCAR, and it's still in the France family. Now, I've been watching news reports of a lawsuit. Two racing teams, one owned by Michael Jordan, where he got a lot of attention, is just having his star power there. And it's all about a charter system. Now, here's what NASCAR did. They give you charters. And if you have a charter, you don't have to worry about qualifying for the race. You're in the race. You might qualify as to where you start, but if you don't have a charter, you're not guaranteed you're in the race. So charters are a big deal. If you've got a sponsor, for example, and you can tell the sponsor, I've got a charter, we're going to be in the race,
Exactly.
that's going to help you get and keep a sponsor. But if you don't have a charter, you've got to qualify. And even really, those qualifying runs for NASCAR are very close. I mean, you're timing down to tenths of a second, and you could be a really good racing team and still miss out on a race if you have just one little problem in your qualifying. So having a charter is a very big deal. And NASCAR gave charters out for only a limited amount of time, so many years, and it would expire. Then you got to have renew it again, or do whatever you have to do, whatever NASCAR says. When they had the contract renewals for charters recently, the way it came out, and I've been watching these news reports from very good reporters in that federal courthouse in Charlotte, North Carolina, where this was going on, and what was happening is that it turns out that NASCAR would give this charter proposal to the racing teams, this big legal document, and they had less than a day to decide whether they wanted to sign it. Less than a
Yep.
day. I mean, not days, hours to
Yep.
decide. That's crazy. And then Jim France, who runs it now, and again, part of the France family again runs NASCAR. They're at the top of it. Well, he got on the stand the other day, and on every important question he was asked, he gave that famous answer that lawyers recommend you give. I don't recall.
Yep. Exactly.
And he said that it got so bad, Duncan, that the judge, I think they asked him what he had for breakfast. He couldn't remember. Or what did you sign yesterday? I mean, it got so bad that the judge in the case directed France to answer the question. Like, I know you know the answer. Answer the question. That's how, and the jurors were they had this baffled look on their face. So I think NASCAR knew that this lawsuit was not going well for them.
Right.
And when you're in a lawsuit, if you lose it, you never know what's going to happen. So what happened? NASCAR settled the lawsuit. In fact, the judge kept prodding them before the trial even started, like, why haven't you settled this? Well, it's because NASCAR
Hmm.
didn't settle. But the thing is, the teams got almost everything they wanted, Duncan. They've got their permanent charters. You don't have to renew the charter anymore. You don't have this situation where you have so many hours to renew your charter and read this legal document and sign your life away. So I mean, there was some negotiation, but the team owners got everything they wanted in this charter situation, which I found interesting because NASCAR has been accused of monopolistic practices. And to me, this settlement indicates, maybe they just have been guilty of it. I can't say that for sure, but the way this was settled sure makes you think that might have been the case. I'm curious on your take.
Yeah, basically NASCAR has always been, this is the France's playpen. If you want to play in it, you're going to have to do exactly what we say. And from Bill France on down, it's been that way. And now, it's good that they're giving the people who are participating. It's almost like, for lack of a better term, employee-owned companies. The teams now have more of a say in how they're going to be able to run, who's going to be able to run, that sort of thing, than just the Francis. Because you said, well, they've been accused of running a monopoly. You know why they're accused of running a monopoly? Because they are. Um, you know, the big racing, the Indy Racing League, owned by Penske Enterprises. They have that. The Formula One, owned by Liberty Media, they have that. So everybody is in their own niche, but you've got to respect the people who are competing for these races and the owners who are, could be losing millions of dollars and not having any say. And like you said, if there are guaranteed spots and they're not guaranteed one, that makes it a heck of a lot different to sponsors and much, much more difficult to keep them.
Well, Duncan, I'm going to give you a chance to talk about something because I've been watching this too, and you've been watching it. There's some really interesting activity at the University of Michigan and their football program. University of Michigan has the largest football stadium in America. You can cram more people in that stadium than you can for a football game than any other stadium in America, which says a lot. So there's a lot of what's been happening with the coach, the athletic director, quite frankly, the whole athletic department there has been pretty strange. What's your take on that? Explain what it's about and what's your take?
Yeah, basically what's happening, there apparently started to be whispers about this in the early fall. But apparently what's happened, and this is what's been going on in the vast majority of reports that I've seen, the coach of Michigan went from one day being the coach of Michigan to the next day being in jail. And here's how that rolled, per the reports. He was involved. He's a married man, has a couple of young daughters, was involved with a female staffer. Apparently, it was not going well. She got pregnant. He allegedly made her have an abortion. Then, to reward her for doing that, he doubled her salary. And then, that's just the straightforward stuff. That's the bad enough stuff. Michigan says, okay, now we've got these facts. And I don't know if they had the facts before or the facts came to light and now they said, okay, we have to act. Who knows how that timeline went. They fired him. Well, apparently upon firing, he went to this staffer's house and then threatened her with harm with the knife, threatened himself with harm with the knife, and said, I'm going to kill myself, but before I do that, I'm going to take you with me. And thankfully, very thankfully, the situation ended with no one hurt, no one injured, and the police were able to take him into custody. But this, again, goes into when people are in a position of authority over someone, there should never, ever, ever take advantage of that situation by doing something like that. Having an affair, is bad enough, but if you're doing it with a subordinate gets pregnant, you force them to get an abortion, and as a reward, you've doubled their salary. You've got to be kidding me. This is just, this kind of stuff can't be allowed to happen.
Well, the only thing I've seen on this, and the only people who are defending this coach are people who are saying he's got a mental health issue, which may be true. But that doesn't excuse this because you get victims here, people who are being victimized, who are subordinate to him. And the other question, I think that what the university is going to have to do is do an investigation as to what people in the athletic department knew about this and when they knew it. We don't know the answers to that yet, but they're going to have to do a pretty full investigation into all this. Was this all a big surprise to everybody, or were there people in authority who knew this was going? I know we've got to remember football at places like Ohio State and Michigan is just king. I mean, it's everything. That
Yep.
Michigan Ohio State football game is like one of the biggest events of the year in college sports and really any sport. So I think uh, it's sad to see these sorts of things happen, and I feel bad for the families involved. That young lady who was victimized has relatives and family, and of course his own family is not is all victimized as a part of this. It's all because he did some things he shouldn't have done, and it got out of control. So yeah, I really, when I read about this story, all I could just think about is just how sad it was for so many people. Okay, Duncan.
And you mentioned mental health. I do want to touch on that for a second, and that's, I think, an absolute issue in this case where circumstances happened and he went off the deep end. But in a legal perspective, basically it was, were you in their right mind when these events occurred? And if you're making her have an abortion and then you double her salary as a reward, that can't be excused as mental health. That's basically
No,
something
I'm just saying the only people defending him were
right,
using that.
right. I know. I just want to clarify that for folks.
I think there are many other factors you got to consider, and you mentioned them all. Let's turn this to a little lighter subject here, because I always like to use some of the stories I found that did not make the mainstream media. Now, you and I both raised. I had two twins. You had a daughter, raising them, and things happen with young kids, especially when they're in toddler years. Well, People Magazine's website talked about this story, which I guess blew up on Reddit also. There was a toddler that apparently swallowed uh, an AirPod, swallowed an AirPod. And a whole bunch of relatives were there. They're all upset. Oh my God, what are we going to do? The first thing is, if it goes down, if it does get stuck in that most they say, okay, that's the biggest problem. But then when it's in there, of course, that's what do you do then? And they're trying to figure, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Well, I guess the toddler's uncle decided to have some fun with it, so he hooked up his phone with the AirPod and tried to play music in it, and put his ear up to the child's stomach and said that he could hear the music, trying to have a little fun and levity with it. Let's just say his relatives in the room did not see the humor in that. But even more importantly, he put this whole thing on Reddit. I'm not on Reddit very much. I think you get on there more than I do. I
Yep.
guess Reddit blew up. They just castigated this guy. And, that's a pretty silly, stupid thing to do, don't you think?
Yeah, and I can't imagine that alcohol played any part in that whatsoever.
Nothing in the
Now, this
story.
would be a great idea. She swallowed this. It could be potentially harmful. Hey, let me see if I can play music through it. That hopefully was not a sober decision and absolutely a wrong one.
Well, I have a story a bit related to that. This is from WSLS TV, and it originates again out of Auckland, New Zealand, the capital of that nation. They have a James Bond inspired Fabergé pendant. These things are really expensive. Now, I didn't get the whole story, but it appears that the police had this guy cornered in a store. So, what did he do with the pendant? He swallowed it. He swallowed the pendant. So, you know what the police did? They waited for him. And this is exactly the way it was described in the story. I guess they either put him in jail or kept him under observation until that Fabergé pendant, quote, exited the suspect's gastrointestinal tract
Yep. Yep.
naturally without any medical intervention. All I can say is I'm certainly glad I'm not the person that had to clean it up afterwards.
Yep. That's a dirty job. That's one of those things that Police have learned, authorities have learned for a long time ago when people used to, and I don't know if they still do it when they smoke, but they would put drugs in condoms and swallow them and then wait for them to exit and then, clean them up and do whatever they need to do with it. So that was semi-quick thinking on his part, but not too clear thinking. And I'm betting that that pendant did not feel too good coming out. Let's put it that way.
He paid a price. I probably got arrested. I don't know that. It wasn't clear, but clearly he was in trouble over this. Duncan, you ever had, particularly at Christmas time, a white elephant gift exchange?
I've participated in a few, yes.
I had a group of people I knew when I worked in downtown Indianapolis. It was a bunch of ladies who invited me to be part of their group. I was surprised, but we had a lot of fun together. We'd have lunch every few weeks, and they had one of these white elephant gift exchanges. So a website called realsimple.com. They have a lot of goofy stories on there. And what they listed was the sorts of things you would like if you have one of these white elephant gift exchanges with coworkers, friends, family members, however you want to do this. Some of the best known or nicely done or famous examples of white elephant gifts. The one I thought was pretty interesting is the Sea Roomy Burritos Tortilla Blanket. A real blanket that looks like a burrito tortilla. I have no idea how it feels, but it looks like a tortilla. The one I like best are the prank lottery tickets and scratch-off cards. They look like they're real, but they're not. And here's the one that got me, the last one I'll mention. The Money Grubbers World's Smallest Violin Keychain with playable sad music. That is a white elephant.
I would be trading that gift. Let's put it that way. That would not be something I would be looking for.
I don't think I would use it either. Duncan, our time is up. Any last thought before we go here?
No, I just hope, especially if you're in the Midwest listening to this or in large parts of the United States, getting some bitter cold coming this weekend. So please stay warm and stay safe.
Yeah, those of us living in the Midwest or Indiana and environs, we're getting an early taste of some bitter cold and snow. So we hope this is not a portent of what's going to happen the whole winter,
Yep.
but we're getting it early. Whether they're going to get it out of the way and it'll be better, we don't know. But if you're not a fan of winter weather, it's make sure you do adjust to it when it's bitterly cold. Dress for the weather if you have to be out, those sorts of things. Thank you so much, Duncan Giles. Always great to have you on our podcast. This is Lannan and Giles Unscripted. We have one ask for you as the audience. Like and subscribe to this podcast. We appreciate it. Duncan and Larry will be back soon with another episode. In the meantime, this is Unscripted.